Hey, it's Rob. I'm back. We're going to do another Offsec Proving Grounds walkthrough. This time, the machine that we're going to look at is a Linux box that's rated as easy and worth 10 points, and it's called Levram. Now, this machine was kind of interesting in the sense that things move quick because when you do the initial scan, there's not a whole lot that shows up, so you got to dive into the research right away. And there's a couple of little extra tidbits I'm going to show you guys today around some of the stuff that I've talked about in previous videos. And when we get there, I'll explain. So without further ado, this is the IP address of the machine. I've already run an Nmap scan because I didn't want to make you wait. If you look up here, we did Nmap with service version detection, T4, all ports, and this is the IP address of the Levram machine. And as you can see, there is not a whole lot going on. Now, there is 22, which is SSH. I've said this before, that is almost never the way. 99% of the time, you're wasting your time if you think that's the way in. 8,000 looks really interesting though. There's obviously something running on there. So the first thing we're going to do is pop up that website. And it takes you to a login screen. Now, I've never heard of this Garapi software before, but I did a little research. It has something to do with web crawling. I didn't find any kind of default credentials, but I tried admin, and of course it worked. So log in with admin, password admin, and then you log in, and here you are. Now, I don't know how this software works. There's clients, there's projects, there's tasks. I looked for a way to maybe upload a file and execute it so I could maybe do a reverse shell or something like that. I couldn't find anything. If you actually, I did do some dir busting on the IP address and port 8000, and there's a Django login box where if I didn't get anything out of this, I was going to head there next. But ultimately, what I did get out of this was this down here. The most important thing, typically when you get into these applications, is to find out what you're up against as far as the version. So this is version 0.9.7. And of course, I did some research, and there's an exploit that was fixed in the next version. So this code right here should work to help us to exploit this box. It's written in Python. And if you take a look through it, there's going to be some import statements that don't look like everyday Python libraries that you probably are going to have. So bad news, you're going to have to run this in a virtual environment. So this time I decided I thought I would show you guys how to set that up. Because it's really not that hard. And basically I just keep running it until it tells me I don't need any more dependencies, and it works. So, because I don't know which one of these libraries are all installed, but I'm pretty sure this PyFiglet is not. I know requests is not, because I had to do a virtual environment for a previous exploit that used that Python library. So we'll show you how to do that. Now, the important thing with this exploit is that it says right here, you have to be authenticated in Garapi. So if we did not have this admin credential that let us in, this would not work. We would need a username and a password for this to work. That's key to remember. The other thing I wanted to do was, there's really no instructions. Usually there's some instructions up at the top, but if you scroll all the way down, there's arguments here, and it's pretty clear what they're looking for. So you got -T for the target, -P for the target port, -L for the local host, which is your machine, -P for the local port, which is the port on your machine. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this code. It's so valuable to learn how to at least understand Python, so I highly encourage you to do that. We copy this, and then what I've done is I've created a directory called Garapi exploit, and the reason I've done that is because, like I said, we have to create a Python virtual environment in here to run this script. So the first thing we'll do is we'll do nano exploit.py, and we'll paste that code in there. And we'll clean up the back end like we always do, get it up to the last parentheses, click Control O to save it, Control X to exit. Now, executable permissions, right? So we got to do chmod u plus x for exploit.py. Now, to do the virtual environment stuff can be a little tricky, but once you do it a few times, it's no big deal. So basically, it creates a sandbox Python environment in that directory, okay? And the way you're going to do this is you're going to do Python 3, and if you could spell Python, that would really be helpful. So Python 3, and we're going to do a module, and we're going to do venv for virtual environment, and we're going to create our virtual environment, which is going to be .venv. I don't think I need to do sudo on that, but we'll find out shortly. So enter, and we're good. The environment's created. So now you have to install any of the dependencies, okay? And the way that you're gonna know that is you could just try and run the program and see what happens, right? So we have to run it using our virtual environment. So we have to do sudo venv, right? And then we have this long string, and this is the arguments that is required for this, right? So if you remember, when we looked at that code, there was -t or -t for the target. So that's the target IP. -p was for the port, which is 8000, because this software is running on 8000, right? $L for our machine, and $P will actually make this 4444 just to make it easier. 4444. So when you run this, I'm not 100% sure this is going to work yet. No. Right here, you see this no module named pyfiglet. So we know we have to install that in our virtual environment. So how do we do that? We do venv, and then I believe it's pip and the library is pyfiglet, right? It helps if you actually type it correctly. Install. Pip install. You have to install something, right? So we're going to pip install pyfiglet. Okay, so that's installed. This is the trial and error method of installing all of the libraries. You could just go through the code and do it that way, but this worked for me, and it turns out there's only really 2 libraries I need to install. So I'll run it again, and now we get this no module name requests. So we go back, and now we just get rid of pyfiglet, and we put requests in here, and this will download that package dependency and install it for you. Okay. Now we're going to try and run it again. And we're going to get an error, and I'll explain what the error is when it pops up. Okay, so you see this error here where it says index out of range. If you go back and you look at the exploit code, there's nothing, it requires a project to be created in that website. And I found this in the GitHub repository that also had this. They said you need at least 1 project created in that Garapi website for this exploit to work. So to do that, I just went in. I went to projects. I clicked create. I named it test. I added an item. I added a column. I called it test. I didn't know exactly how much I had to do here to make this work, so I added a spider list. I called it test. And then I came down here and I clicked save. And I think that's all I did. And if you go to projects now, it shows there's a project in there. Okay? So now if we go back to our exploit and we try running it again, you can see now it's getting the project, getting the ID of the project to build a URL, found an ID, setting up the Netcat listener, boom, we are connected. Now, this shell that we have is a bit of a pain in the butt. It's not a restricted shell, but it's not a fully interactive shell. And I tried to get a better shell, and I just couldn't. It wasn't working. Ultimately, though, don't really need it, because I did do some investigation, and there really wasn't anything that I could take advantage of. The only thing I would say, I did history. That was getting sent to dev null. I did sudo. I don't have the password because we didn't actually log in, right? We used an exploit to get logged in. So I have no idea what the password is. I'm not in any groups. I checked that. If you type ID, I mean, you can see pretty quickly that I have nothing. If I type ID, it's just, I'm app. That's who I am. So if I type who am I, I'm app. So obviously you see I don't have any kind of elevated rights. Now, if you do an ls, you can see there's some stuff in here in this Garapi directory that we landed in. So I went back to the home directory for app, did an ls. There's the local flag, so you would just cat local. See what I mean about the shell, though? There's nothing, you can't even tab things out. So local.txt, there's the local flag, so you're 50% of the way there. I also noticed that there's this thing run .shell. So cat run .shell. And you can see basically what you're doing here is you're starting this Garapi server, right? So I didn't really mess around too much. Basically, I said, you know what? I'm going to go to old trusty linpeas on this, and I'm going to run linpeas and see what it comes up with. So I'm going to show you how to do that, right? So we're going to go back to our Kali box, and I'm going to open a new terminal. We're going to go to cd tools, which is where I keep my stuff, and I got linpeas in a directory called linpeas. Do an ls, you can see I have the linpeas script right there. I'm going to do what I always do, which is Python 3, do a HTTP server so that I can serve files to any machine on this network from this directory specifically, and grab the linpeas script from this box and get it on my exploited box. So what we're going to do is we're going to do wget, which is a way to grab files from a remote host. And we're going to do my IP address, which is 168.45.180.1, port 8000, because that's what we started the server on. And then we want the linpeas.shell script. We hit enter, it downloads linpeas for us. Okay. Next thing we got to do, always got to do, is chmod u+x to give this script executable permissions. I'm running it in my own home directory, which I should be able to do, right? So if I do ls ail, we can see now linpeas is executable. So I'm going to run it. linpeas.shell. And again, linpeas is just phenomenal, right? I mean, it just gives you so much information. It's unbelievable. And the stuff that you need to pay attention to is anything that is red text with yellow background or red. That is the stuff that's going to either give you escalation or exploitation. Now, for us, luckily, there's not a whole lot that shows up yellow and red, but there is one key thing that we need to focus on. And I'll show you my thought process when I found this out. But there's definitely a way to get root on this box. It's not a problem. So we'll let limps finish up here. If we go back to the top, I always like to go top down, right? So like I said, red and yellow and red is what you want to pay attention to. So as we scroll down, nothing. I mean, we see some CVs that we could potentially look at. This is interesting. I mean, we'll come back and look at processes for sure. Nothing in cron. Keep scrolling. Keep scrolling. Keep scrolling. There it is right there. So, and we could have actually found this if we would have run a find on any files in the file system with the SUID set. So basically this file's got the SUID set, so it executes with the owner's permissions, which in this case you'll see the owner of this file is root. And this is pretty bad because it's basically the Python. It's Python. So you can see user bin Python, but it's Python 3.10, right? And the set UID is set with executable permissions too. So this was the way that I figured I was going to be taking advantage of this box, because there's not a whole lot else to look at. I mean, really, there's nothing. If you go back and you look at the processes, my initial thought was this. I noticed, like, the things that were running as app, if you look, there's even like the Garapi servers running as Python 3, but not Python 3.10, which is, I was, thinking maybe I can exploit this box by manipulating that shell script that's in my home directory and having it do something else other than start this server. But there's an easier way, I think. You can use Python. There's a website, and I'll show it to you, actually. It's called GTFO bins. If you don't know about this website, you need to go to it immediately, okay? And basically, it's all the binary. When they say bins, they mean binaries. It's all the binaries that you can abuse in Linux if they're not set up correctly. And if you look down here, you can definitely abuse Python with the SUID set. And this right here is what we're looking for. Now, this wouldn't work out of the box for us because, remember, we got to change a couple of things. We got to change this to Python 3.10. I think I didn't see if the Bourne shell was on there, but I changed it to bash. So if we go back and we look at the exploit, right, and we do which Python 3.10, it's in user bin. So we definitely want to change that GTFO bin to reference that instead of Python. So I actually wrote it out here for us, and I'm just going to copy and paste it in. So you can see, right, I'm using user bin Python 3.10, and I'm executing these commands, which ultimately are going to, it's basically going to spawn a bash shell with root privileges because this binary is got root privileges. So when we hit enter, and I do, it looks like nothing happened, right? It looks like we're in trouble here. But if I go, who am I? I'm root. So now I can do something like bin bash I and ls, and I'm root, right? So now I can go cd root ls proof cat proof .txt. So the way in was abusing that application, right? Using that exploit. And then the way to privesc was abusing the fact that they had the SUID set on Python, which is probably a bad idea. So that's essentially how I got into this box. It really didn't take me too long. After I got LinPs running, I saw that Python situation. I was like, yeah, that's the way. So I went to GTFO bins, which I'll link in the description below, along with the exploit that I used, and yeah, and that's it. So that's how we did it. That's how we got root on this box. Levram is down, and now we'll move on to the next one. So hopefully this helped you guys out, and I'll talk to you again when we do the next walkthrough. All right, take care, guys. Bye.